This is the DL Chronicles Ultimate Marathon. 2 hours inside a married man's double life. Quiet lies, hidden desires, and the truth he hopes no one ever sees. Settle in. Chapters 1 through 8 begin now. The makings of a down low man. Terry is alone. The house is quiet. And he can't stop thinking. It was 2:47 in the morning, and Terry was sitting at the kitchen table with a glass of water he hadn't touched and a silence so thick he could hear his own pulse. Claire was upstairs asleep with the baby next to her. Terry had been sleeping in the guest room since everything was revealed. He picked up the water glass as he tried stopping his memories from racing. Late nights had always been when his mind ran fastest, when the thoughts he kept behind walls during the day found the cracks and pushed through. He kept tracing the line back, following the thread of every decision he'd made, every version of himself he'd hidden or fed in secret. The first time he felt the touch of another man, he was 19. His name was Marcus. They were in a dorm room that smelled like cheap cologne and unwashed laundry, and the desperation of two boys who had been low-key flirting with each other for 3 weeks pretending they weren't. Terry didn't understand yet what he was feeling. He only knew that when Marcus looked at him a certain way, something in his chest poked open and he started to feel warm, like stepping into a bath that was slightly too hot. He was down low before he even knew what DL meant. He was just a guy who knew he couldn't tell anyone how he was feeling. Whatever this was, whatever Marcus was, it lived only in that dorm room. What scared him? That wanting this felt more natural than anything he'd ever felt with a girl. Labels had never made sense to Terry. Straight, bi, gay. He just felt like himself. A man who got hard for what he got hard for. Sometimes that was a woman. Sometimes that was a man. He wasn't confused about it. He just refused to let other people's categories be the thing that got him unwanted attention. Marcus kissed him first, and Terry kissed him back. They were on the narrow dorm mattress with the springs that poked through, and Terry didn't notice the springs once. He noticed Marcus's mouth, so warm, gliding against his neck. It felt like Marcus had done this before. When Marcus went down on Terry, he stared at the water-stained ceiling tile and felt the center of his chest moving fast. Marcus's mouth was going up and down and wet and working like he was in a trance. And Terry made a sound that he'd never heard himself make before. Afterwards, Marcus had his head on Terry's chest. Terry laid very still and felt the weight of him and thought, damn, no girl had ever did him like Marcus just did. He knew, right then, that this would not be the last time he let a man do that to him. He went home for winter break. He met a girl named Sheila at a New Year's party. He asked her for her number. He built his down-low life, one brick at a time, creating a wall between his public and his private life, and he got very good at it. Part of what made it work, what made the wall feel worth building, was that hiding himself did something to him. There was something about being down low that turned Terry on in a way he never fully admitted out loud. The idea that he could want women, could love women, could build a whole life in the light with a woman, and still have this other thing living in the dark. The men were the secret, and the secret turned him on. He was 24 when he went to his first darkroom party. He'd heard about it the way you heard about everything you weren't supposed to know about. He'd found out in an online chat room. He visited sometimes when the craving got loud enough that he couldn't think straight. Somebody posted the details for a Black and Latino sexy bro party happening nearby. The need in him was physical, like hunger. He needed to be with a man. So he went to the party. He drove past it 3 times before he parked. Inside, it took his eyes almost a full minute to adjust. Dark was not a strong enough word. The house absorbed light. It smelled like sweat and bodies and something musky that made his mouth go wet before he'd seen a single thing. Low music, no lyrics, and men. Men in various states and in various configurations, in various areas of the home. Nobody looking at anybody's face, which seemed to be the whole point. It was a house, regular looking from the outside, the kind you'd drive past without a second thought, except for the red light on the porch like a signal. Someone was at the door when he arrived. Calm, professional almost, checking people in like it was a venue. Terry had expected to feel out of place, exposed, wrong. Instead, he felt something he hadn't expected. Normal. Like he had walked into a room where nobody needed to explain themselves because everyone already understood. The first mask he put on was handed to him at the door. They actually had masks and other items for purchase, like some gangbang party corner store. He got a plain black half mask, elastic band, covered his eyes and the bridge of his nose, and nothing else. The moment he put it on a different version of himself, stepped forward, and took the wheel. He grabbed a drink from the little bar set up in the corner and started moving through the house. Each room held something different. He stood in the corner holding a drink and felt, for the first time in his adult life, genuinely invisible. Not in the bad way, in the free way. Nobody here knew his name. Nobody here knew where he went to church or what his parents' expectations were, or that he'd been dating Keisha for 8 months. He was just a body in a dark room with a mask on. The first man who touched Terry was slim thick, waist snatched enough to make a man forget his manners, hips with a little sway, skin glowing under the dark lights. He stood there and let himself be touched by the man, almost worshipped, as the man went to his knees in front of him. The whole room seemed to tilt toward them. Terry felt himself go somewhere else, some quieter place behind his own eyes. And the man worked his throat like he had something to prove. A few others had drifted closer, drawn in without a word, and Terry could hear their breathing in the dark as the man on his knees went deeper, went harder, took more. He felt his whole body go liquid, warmth spreading from his sternum to his thighs. And he thought, this shit feels like heaven. A room full of men for the choosing, and no one knew him. That moment unlocked something for Terry. He had only scratched the surface of his desires. He went back 4 more times. Each time he learned something new about what his body wanted and what it could feel. He learned the difference between an orgasm and something that emptied him down to his bones and left him clean on the other side. He learned that he could lick sweat from a stranger's collarbone and feel more present in his own body than he'd ever felt in any other room. He stopped going after he got engaged to Claire. That was the deal he made with himself. When Terry was 27, he was too busy building a life with Claire to frequent dark room parties, although there had been the occasional times when he got head in the park from an anonymous guy off an app, but those were quick, careful interactions. But there was this one incident that really was unexpected. He had met a woman at a party, someone's rooftop during the summer. Claire wasn't there for some reason. This woman was the most beautiful person in the room. She wore something red and moved like she owned the square footage around her body. She laughed at something he said and touched his arm. He was attracted to her in the way he was attracted to women. Before things had moved from the rooftop to somewhere else, a man had walked up beside her. Tall, the kind of easy confidence that didn't need to announce itself. She'd smiled when she saw him. She introduced him as her husband. Terry had braced for the night to end right there. Instead, the man looked at Terry the same way she had been looking at him all evening. And something unspoken passed between the three of them like a current. They invited him back to their hotel. What followed was the kind of night Terry had no framework for before it happened. and no words to describe it after it happened. He was with both of them, her body and his warmth and want layered together in ways that made the room feel small and the world feel very far away. Each of them watched while the other had him. Each of them took their turn and their time. Terry moved between them like he'd always known how, like some part of him had been practicing for exactly this without knowing it. He drove home before sunrise. He sat in his car in the parking lot for a long time. He could not stop smiling at what he had just did, another one of his secrets. Then after some time, Jarvis moved in across the street. In the beginning, Terry genuinely hadn't meant to start sleeping with Jarvis. For a while, things had actually been good at home. He and Claire had been building something real, locked in, focused, in that season where two people are so busy growing together that there isn't much room for anything else. He'd started a new job, the kind that takes up space in your head even when you're not at your desk. The late-night apps, the dark rooms, the careful arrangements he used to make, all of it had gone quiet. He didn't have the time, and for a while, he didn't feel the pull. And then, one afternoon, he looked out the window and saw a man moving boxes across the lawn, and everything in him went still. Jarvis. He didn't know his name yet. He just knew he couldn't stop watching him. He'd told himself it was just him being neighborly when he suggested to Claire that they take a bottle of wine over and introduce themselves. What he hadn't prepared for was how quickly Claire and Jarvis hit it off, laughing easily, finishing each other's jokes, the kind of connection that looks effortless from the outside. Terry watched it happen and felt two things at the same time. Glad for her, and aware that his own eyes kept drifting back to Jarvis for entirely different reasons. Terry had started a private subscription account to generate a little income on the side, a freaky outlet for the version of himself that had fewer places to go in marriage. He worked from home half the week, and while she was at the office, he was in front of a camera. He loved wearing the mask, loved how it let him become someone else, or maybe the most honest version of himself. He was never sure which. Once people started paying for his videos, the incentive stacked on top of the desire, and it became its own thing. When Jarvis recognized him online, Terry felt his stomach drop through the floor. But 9 months of them sneaking back and forth, crossing their lawns in the dark. 9 months of Jarvis's hands and Jarvis's mouth and Jarvis's bedroom. He knew what Jarvis's tight hole felt like, gripping his fingers when Terry worked him open, slow and patient. Watching Jarvis's face go slack and his mouth fall open, watching him drip and shake. He knew what it felt like to sink into Jarvis, warm and tight and flooded with want, and hear Jarvis pull air through his teeth like it was the best thing that had ever happened to him. He knew what Jarvis sounded like when he came apart, and he knew what his own chest felt like in the aftermath. What scared him most was that Jarvis had become consistent. He wasn't a one-time thing, wasn't something Terry could file away as a moment of weakness and move past. Jarvis was a pattern. Jarvis was a choice he kept making over and over across a lawn in the dark. Now, present day, Terry picked up the water glass and drank it. Outside, the sky was doing that thing it does in the hours before sunrise. He didn't know what would come next. He knew that for the first time in a long time, he wanted to be his authentic self, not some version only present in dark rooms. He didn't know what to do with that yet, but he was willing to figure it out. Through the window, across the lawn, Jarvis's light was still off. Terry stood at the top of the stairs and let himself feel the warmth of knowing exactly where he was. Then he went to bed. It started like nothing. Just another night, just another scroll through a site he had no business being on. The kind you keep tucked in a private browser, volume low, light off. He wasn't looking for anything special, just background noise for a hand and a fantasy. But then he saw him. Black mask, baseball cap low, bare chest catching the glow from a cheap ring light, jawline clean, shoulders rolled like they belonged in slow motion. Familiar. Too familiar. He clicked in. The camera tightened on the man's mouth, soft lips pulling back into something between a smirk and an invitation. Then the voice hit, low, raspy, slow enough to make you lean in. And that's when his stomach dropped. It was him. The man next door. The same man who waved when walking his pit bull at 8 a.m., who grilled on Sundays with his wife in the yard, who always smelled like something expensive when you passed him by the mailbox. Married, straight, untouchable, until now. The first night, he stayed silent in the chat, just watched, let the recognition settle in his bones, let the disbelief turn into something else. By the second night, he was tipping, small at first, then more. Each tip earning a longer stare into the camera, a slower hand down his chest, fingers tracing the waistband of his shorts. By the end of the week, he knew the man's schedule better than his own. Yard work before dinner, mail run before sunset, dog walk at 8, wife upstairs by 10. And by 11, the mask came on. Daylight was the real test, passing each other on trash day, catching eyes in the driveway. Just neighborly nods. Hello, how you doing? Nothing in his tone giving away that 12 hours earlier, he was on camera telling him exactly what to do next. He started asking for more. Gloves, slow unmasking, bending over just enough to make the chat lose its mind. The man did it all, never breaking eye contact with the lens, never saying his name, just moving like he knew every hidden part of the person on the other side. Then one night, mid-show, the neighbor typed 3 words in the private chat. Come. Over. Now, he sat there, frozen. The screen was still live, viewers still tipping, chat still rolling. But those 3 words pulled him straight out of the fantasy and into something sharper. Real. Dangerous. He closed the laptop, threw on a black jacket, slipped out the side door. Crossing that patch of lawn felt like walking into a dare. Every sound was louder. Crickets, his own breath, the hum of the AC unit. The door opened before he could knock. Shirtless, mask still on, chest rising like he'd just finished a set. They stood there, close enough to feel each other's heat, not saying a word. Inside, the glow from the computer lit the room. The cam site still open, chat blowing up with questions. The air smelled like cologne and weed. He stepped in. The door clicked shut. They moved slow, but not careful. Close enough to feel the weight of the weeks they'd been pretending. Fingers brushed, a breath caught. One more step and it was happening. Until it wasn't. A car door slammed outside. Keys rattled. A woman's voice, light and easy, calling his name. They froze. He backed toward the kitchen, slipped out the back door just as she walked in. From the shadows, he heard her laugh, heard him greet her like nothing was off. Back in his bed, laptop open, the neighbor was online again. Mask on. Staring right into the camera and smiling. This story follows Jarvis, a quiet neighbor who stumbles onto a campsite one night and recognizes the masked performer on screen, Terry, the married man who lives next door. What begins as anonymous watching turns into something much more dangerous when Terry invites him over in secret. This episode picks up days later as tension simmers beneath the surface and Claire, Terry's wife and head of the neighborhood association, unknowingly pulls them all closer together. Before the cupcakes, before the block party, before the folding chairs in the garage and the kiss in the hallway, there was a moment in the dark when Jarvis almost crossed the line. It started weeks earlier, during a late-night scroll through a site he rarely admitted to using. Private browser, volume low. Just background noise for a restless body and a quiet urge. Until he saw the man on screen, shirtless, masked, lips parted just enough to catch the glow of the ring light. There was something about the shoulders, the jaw, the way he moved. Familiar. Too familiar. It was Terry, the man next door. By day, Terry walked his pit bull in a fitted tee and cologne that clung to the mailbox. Always polite. Married. Safe. By night, he logged onto a campsite, faceless and bold, performing for strangers. Jarvis had watched silently at first, then tipped, then lingered too long. Until one night the message came through. Come. Over. Now Jarvis had crossed the lawn without thinking. Walked into Terry's house like he'd done it before. And maybe in some ways he had. In fantasy, in imagination, in the 1,000 ways desire rehearses itself before it becomes real. They didn't speak, didn't need to, until headlights flashed through the blinds, until keys jingled at the front door, until Claire, Terry's wife and the president of the neighborhood association, called out from the driveway. Light and casual, like everything was. Exactly how it should be. Jarvis had slipped out the back door before she walked in. That was days ago. Now, tonight, Terry is online again. No words, no build-up. Just a quick, focused session. The kind of show that feels less like seduction and more like a release. Jarvis doesn't even touch himself this time. Just watches. Eyes locked. Remembering the way Terry had looked at him not through the screen, but up close, in the doorway, bare-chested, breathless, daring him to stay. The screen cuts off clean. The next morning, there's a knock at Jarvis's door. It's Claire. She's holding a tray of cupcakes, red velvet, homemade, each one frosted to perfection and topped with a little paper flag that reads, Happy Block Party. She's bright, smiling, wrapped in early morning sunshine and Lululemon. Her hair pulled back, her lip gloss set, her scent a clean mix of lemon lotion and fresh laundry. She speaks like someone used to running things. The kind of woman who doesn't wait for agreement, just assumes it. She mentions the neighborhood event next weekend, says they could really use more hands this year, says Jarvis has a calm vibe she likes, says Thursday would be a great day to help with planning. And just before she leaves, she tosses it in like a casual afterthought. Terry will be home too. Says the two of them should get to know each other better. Jarvis closes the door with the tray still in his hands. The smell of frosting and citrus hanging in the air. Thursday arrives with little fanfare. The inside of Terry and Claire's home is soft, curated, and just the right kind of lived in. Neutral tones, framed engagement photos, a candle burning near the sink, eucalyptus and mint. Claire is already mid-motion when Jarvis walks in, balancing her laptop in one hand and a clipboard in the other, music playing low on a smart speaker. Her presence fills the space, warm, efficient, sharp. Then Terry enters. No mask this time, no ring light, just a t-shirt damp from a workout, athletic shorts hanging low on his hips, and that scent, expensive cologne softened by weed and sweat. He gives Jarvis a nod that's almost nothing, and somehow, everything. Claire assigns them to the garage, folding chairs, supply bins, small tasks that feel enormous once the door closes behind them. The garage is hot, the air still. It smells like mulch and motor oil, plastic bins stacked with holiday decorations and old gym equipment. They don't speak. They move around each other with the kind of silence that buzzes, that hums just beneath the skin. When Terry reaches across him to grab a folding table, their arms touch. Jarvis doesn't flinch. Neither does he. 2 days later, the block party hits full volume. There are coolers packed with beer, kids running barefoot across sidewalks, grills going, music blasting from somebody's Bluetooth speaker duct taped to a tree. The street feels like it belongs to someone else. Loud, chaotic, sticky with heat and sweet barbecue smoke. Claire moves through it all like a campaign ad, hugging neighbors, reassigning tasks, fixing decorations with one hand while waving with the other. Her dress is fitted, her hair smooth, her smile polished. She doesn't miss a beat. Jarvis tries to stay useful, grabs trash bags, refills the utensils, pretends to text when Terry walks by. There's no eye contact, not at first. Then a glance across the drinks table. Then another glace at each other near the speaker. Then a moment in passing, a whisper, low enough to feel, not here. Front door is unlocked, says Terry as he walks by. Jarvis doesn't move right away. He waits, watches, times it just right. Claire is deep in conversation with two neighbors about recycling bins. Someone's asking her to check the raffle tickets. Jarvis slips away at this moment. Inside Terry's house, it's cooler, quieter. The kitchen smells like the inside of someone else's shirt. That mix of skin and detergent and something unspoken. Terry stands at the counter, shirtless. 2 open beers. One is already sweating. There's no rush this time. They stand there for a second too long, both of them pretending this is a decision. Terry says it's not that serious. Says the cam stuff is just fun. Says Claire doesn't need to know. Says some things just don't have to mean anything. Jarvis doesn't answer. Not with words. They move closer. Hands, then lips. Shirts falling away. Heat rising. They make it to the hallway before the kiss deepens. Terry's hand pressing against Jarvis's lower back. Jarvis's lips trailing along his neck. The kind of kiss that feels earned. That remembers. That knows better and leans in anyway. And then the doorbell. They freeze. Jarvis's hand is still on Terry's waist, breath caught in his throat. Then Claire's voice, just outside, calling Terry's name. Says she's looking for Jarvis. Says someone told her he might have come inside. She says she needs his signature. Jarvis doesn't move. Terry stays still. Then come the keys, the jingle, the shift in the doorknob, the slow sound of it unlocking. And that's where it happens. Jarvis hadn't planned on saying anything. The bottle of wine was almost gone, the playlist on its second loop, and his friend Dion was already stretched across the couch like he didn't plan on moving anytime soon. They were tipsy, loose, half watching some movie neither of them picked on purpose. It slipped out casually, almost like a dare. Jarvis told Dion there was something wild he had to see. Something that started as curiosity and turned into complication. He explained it the way people tell secrets they half regret knowing. That his married neighbor, the one with the pit bull and the wife who ran the neighborhood association, had a secret life online. That at night, while his wife was upstairs or out of town, the neighbor went live on a campsite in a black mask, putting on a show for strangers, and that Jarvis had been watching. Dayon didn't believe it. Not really. So Jarvis pulled out the laptop. The site loaded. The stream was already live. There he was, the neighbor with the wife. Shirtless, masked, lit in a soft red glow, moving like he was alone but knew exactly how to be watched. Dion leaned forward, one eyebrow raised. Jarvis didn't say anything else. He didn't have to. A notification popped up in the corner of the screen. It was a private message. Jarvis read it silently at first. Then again, slower. The married neighbor had written, asking if Jarvis was watching him with a friend. Said he'd noticed someone come over earlier. The next message came quickly, asking if the two of them wanted a private show. Jarvis read the message out loud. Dion stared at the screen, then at him. He shrugged like it was nothing, like they were just two grown men with a buzz and too much time on their hands. He said, maybe it could be a fun story. Jarvis typed back. Said they were in. They didn't overthink it. Didn't even put on real shoes. Just crossed the lawn with the kind of quiet energy that comes from doing something that feels wrong, but already decided. The neighbor with the wife opened the door before they knocked. He was shirtless. The same red lighting from the stream flickered behind him. The air smelled like weed and something more expensive underneath it. He didn't smile, didn't ask questions. Just handed each of them a black mask and said it was so they could stop pretending. The tequila was already open on the counter. They each took a shot, then another. The neighbor with the wife started slowly, putting on a show for the two of them. He moved like he'd done this 100 times, like performance was second nature. Jarvis and Dion watched from the couch at first, masks on, letting the moment unfold. But it didn't stay passive for long. The neighbor reached for Jarvis first, pulled him up by the wrist, slow but firm. Then he turned to Dion, drawing him in with the same casual confidence. Before long, it was all of them. The touching started playful, a hand on a thigh, a glance that lingered, the kind of tension that built in layers, subtle but impossible to ignore. Shirts came off. Skin met a skin. breath caught between bodies. They moved around each other like they'd done it before. Or maybe just imagined it enough that the choreography felt rehearsed. The neighbor kissed Jarvis first. It was rougher than before, hungrier, like he'd been waiting since that moment in the hallway, holding back every second until now. Jarvis didn't hold back this time. Dion stayed on the couch, watching them like it was part of the show. One hand resting between his legs, stroking himself slow. The neighbor kissed Jarvis down his chest, across his stomach, down the trail of hair that led beneath his waistband. Then he dropped to his knees. He pulled Jarvis forward, gently lifting one leg and spreading him open. And then the neighbor with the wife buried his face between Jarvis's butt cheeks, licking slow, deep, and without shame. His tongue moved like it had purpose, like this was the reward he'd been chasing since that first tip on the campsite. Jarvis gripped the back of the couch for balance, knees shaking. And Dion, still masked, still hard, watched without saying a word. If you haven't heard the previous chapters, go back and get into it. But here's a quick catch-up. Jarvis, the neighbor, got curious, clicked into a campsite, and saw something he wasn't supposed to see. Terry, the man with a wife next door, masked up and putting on a show for strangers. That curiosity turned physical. First a visit, then a hallway kiss, and then his friend got involved. Claire, the wife, still hosting bake sales and block parties like nothing's off. In the last chapter, we saw Claire unlocking the door while Jarvis, the neighbor, was pressed against the hallway wall, lips still wet from a kiss with her husband, managing to keep their secret romance still a secret. The backyard looked like a Pinterest board come to life. White folding chairs, pink napkins, a giant balloon floating in the center of it all. Claire, the wife, was radiant, hair curled, lips glossy, one hand resting on her stomach like she just remembered it was there. She stood beneath a banner that said, "Boy or girl?" As neighbors gathered around holding phones, drinks, and secrets. Terry, her husband, stood behind her, his arm a little too posed around her waist. Jarvis, the neighbor he's sleeping with, kept to the back, next to the drinks table, next to Dion, silently watching. The countdown started. Phones raised, a needle pricked the balloon, pink confetti rained, and everyone cheered. Claire, the wife, squealed, threw her head back, and kissed Terry, like nothing in the world was wrong. He smiled for the cameras, but his eyes never met Jarvis. Not once. Later, over cupcakes, Claire pulled Jarvis for a chat, said she wanted him involved, said he gave off Godfather energy, said she trusted him. Her fingers lingered on his arm when she said it. After the cake and the Instagram photos, the crowd started thinning. Claire, the wife, was outside rearranging flower arrangements for the third time. Inside, Jarvis, the neighbor, wandered toward the kitchen to grab a drink. The air was cooler there. Terry, Claire's husband, was already inside, elbows on the counter, head down like he was praying. He looked up slowly, eyes landing on Jarvis like it hurt. Then he nodded toward the hallway. "Can you come upstairs a sec? I need help moving something in the baby room," Terry said. Jarvis didn't ask questions, he just followed. They moved like shadows. Upstairs, past the framed maternity photos and baby shower invites taped to the fridge. The guest room that would become the nursery still smelled like paint and potential. But the air shifted the second the door closed behind them. Terry stood with his back to Jarvis, hands on a small dresser, like he was about to move it, like that was still his plan. But he didn't lift it. He turned instead, chest rising, eyes locked and loaded onto Jarvis. Jarvis stepped in first. They didn't kiss. Not yet. Their foreheads touched first, then their hands found each other's torsos. They gripped, clutched, squeezed. Clothes dropped in pieces. A shirt, a belt. Then pants puddled around ankles like this had all been waiting underneath. Terry didn't ask permission, just moved behind him, steady, urgent, already hard. Jarvis braced against the changing table, breath tight, ready for it. Terry slid inside slow, then deeper, then again. He whispered, "You feel like trouble." Jarvis arched his back in response. The sounds they made weren't pretty. They were real, familiar. The kind two men know how to make when they've stopped pretending they're not going to do this again. It wasn't fast, but it wasn't soft either. They didn't kiss. That would have made it mean something. Their bodies did all the talking, skin on skin, muscle on muscle, until it was over. Downstairs, Claire was holding her phone up to the light, making an Instagram reel to announce her pregnancy online to her followers. Terry, her husband, walked past her, shirt back on, smile reset. He didn't look back. Jarvis, the neighbor, followed, 2 steps behind, adjusting his belt. Claire turned, caught his eye, and smiled. Outside, the wind blew a piece of pink streamer across the porch. Back inside his own place, Jarvis couldn't help but still smell Terry on his skin. The Man Next Door has a secret DL life. Chapter 5. She read the texts. Then her water broke. Of course they kept hooking up. What else was they gonna do? Every cookout, every meeting, every late night walk to the mailbox turned into a quickie behind closed doors. 9 months later, Claire, the wife, is belly first and glowing, while Jarvis, the neighbor, is out here trying to act like things with Terry, her husband, ain't still complicated. Jarvis had been dating someone. Not serious. Just enough to make it look like he's got his own thing going. Dinner twice a week. Nothing too deep, but petty travels faster than truth. It was a Thursday afternoon when Terry, the man with a wife, saw Jarvis, the neighbor, out in public. They were at the smoothie spot near the gym. Jarvis, laughing with a man who looked like he actually called his mom back. Terry, the man with a wife, didn't approach them, didn't wave, just waited until later to send a text to Jarvis. "I guess you don't need me no more. Enjoy your mango protein shake, King." Later on that evening, Claire picked up Terry's phone while he was in the shower. She saw the text thread. No tears, no questions, just a deep exhale. And then her fucking water broke in the hallway before she could even put the phone back. At the hospital, nurses moved like they'd done this 1,000 times. Claire held her belly with one hand. Terry acted like he cared, like he was ready. Hours passed. Contractions came and went. Then the baby arrived. A beautiful baby girl. Terry cut the cord, took the photos, kissed Claire on the forehead, Unaware, Claire saw all the text messages between him and Jarvis. She let him perform husband duties like it mattered. Then she told him to go home. Said she forgot her robe and her charger. She really just wanted some time to herself. Terry pulled into the driveway. The house felt too still, too staged. Jarvis, the neighbor, was outside. As he pulled something from the trunk of the car, Jarvis, the neighbor, stepped closer. It only took one look, one long stare, and next thing they knew, they were inside Terry's house, alone. Inside, the hallway lights were dim. The house smelled like fresh linen and cheap air freshener. Jarvis dropped to his knees the second the door locked. No build-up at all. He tugged down Terry's sweats, mouth open, and took him in full, almost angry. Spit hit the floor. Jarvis gripped Terry's thighs like he was anchoring himself. Terry didn't move, just leaned back against the wall, head tilted up, letting it all happen. Jarvis choked a little but didn't stop. His nose pressed to Terry's pelvis, eyes shut tight. Every motion said, "Remember this." Every swallow said, "This is still mine." When it was over, Jarvis wiped his lips, then stood quietly. Terry zipped up his pants, grabbed the robe and the charger. "She had the baby," Terry said. Jarvis just nodded. Terry looked at him again. Not with guilt, not with shame, but with that same tension they'd had since the beginning. This isn't the end. More chapters are coming, and trust, it only gets messier from here. The Man Next Door has a secret DL Life Chronicles. Check the description for links to the previous episodes. Chapter 6. What they were both doing while the baby slept. Simone's mouth had been at work going on 20 minutes, and Claire had stopped keeping track. That was the point of these nights. The hotel was nothing special, the kind of place that cleaned the sheets properly and asked no questions and had blackout curtains that did their job. She'd told Terry she needed a few hours to decompress. He'd nodded the way he nodded at the things he filed under Claire's errands and didn't think about again. She'd been in this room for 2 hours. The lamp on the nightstand threw a low amber glow across the bed. Simone's natural hair was loose tonight, fanning out against Claire's inner thighs, and her hands were pressed flat against Claire's stomach. Holding her still, holding her down, holding her exactly where she wanted her. She moved with the patience of a woman who had been doing this long enough to know that the rush was never the point. Her tongue traced slow and certain, tasting Claire the way she'd been tasting her for years. Like there was nowhere else she needed to be. Claire had one hand buried in Simone's hair, and the other fisted in the hotel sheet. Her chest was rising and falling in a pattern that had nothing to do with the woman she was at block parties and Instagram reels and neighborhood association meetings. The clipboard version of her was somewhere on the floor with her shoes. This version, back arched, mouth open, hips rocking into Simone's mouth on a rhythm they'd built together over a decade and a half. This was the one only Simone had ever seen. Simone pressed closer, sealed her mouth and pulled slow and deep, her fingers adding to what her tongue was already doing, reading the change in Claire's breathing the way a musician reads a key change. Claire's thighs tightened around her shoulders. Her fingers pressed harder into Simone's hair, just gripping the way you grip something when everything in your body is trying to hold itself together before it can't. Claire came with her head thrown back, and Simone's name somewhere between a whisper and a scream. Her whole body arced and then went soft, the tension unraveling all at once, Simone staying with her through every second of it. Afterward, Simone moved up the bed and stretched out beside her, pulled the sheet up without being asked, rested her chin on Claire's shoulder the way she always did after their intimacy, a habit from 100 hotel rooms and stolen apartments over the years. They lay like that a while, the room quiet, the curtains doing their job. "I'm tired," Simone said finally. Claire turned her head, looked at her. "Not like that." Simone's eyes were on the ceiling. "Tired of this. Tired of being your shadow," Simone said. "Tired of being kept on the side while you go home to your husband. Tired of eating you out in hotel rooms while I'm still out here playing best friend." Claire knew Simone was right. She'd known for a while that this conversation was coming. She'd been preparing for it since the baby's arrival. She exhaled slowly through her nose. "I'll set a dinner with everyone at my house," she said. Simone looked at her. "I mean it," Claire said. "It's time." Simone studied her face for a long moment, having learned over 16 years exactly what Claire looked like when she was performing versus when she was telling the truth. What she found was Claire. Just Claire. Still soft from coming, lying in a hotel room. Finally done waiting. Simone kissed her once, then settled back against her shoulder. "Okay," she said. Meanwhile, back at Terry and Claire's home. The nursery was dim and smelled like baby powder and the last trace of the paint Claire had picked out. "Barely their beige," the sample card had said, which had made Terry laugh because who named paint colors? He stood at the changing table with both hands moving by instinct now, no longer fumbling through the steps the way he had the first week when everything about a baby felt like assembling furniture without instructions. His daughter blinked up at him. He made a face. She made a face back. He finished up, lifted her against his chest, and started the slow rotation. The walk sway that he had discovered by accident the second night home and had been deploying every evening since. She settled against him the way she always did, head in the crook of his neck, small fist opening and closing against his shoulder like she was practicing holding on. He got the bottle ready one-handed, fed her slow in the glider in the corner, the one Claire had picked, the color she'd debated for 2 weeks. His daughter's eyes went heavy. Her mouth slowed on the bottle. He sat there in the almost dark with the white noise machine running and let himself be still for a minute, which was harder than it sounded for a man who spent most of his time pretending to be someone he wasn't. Then his phone buzzed on the changing table. He reached for it without standing, tipping it face up just enough to read the preview. It was Jarvis. The first message was just a picture, no text. Jarvis in a bathroom mirror, shirt off, caught in low light, looking exactly like a man who knew what he was doing and wanted Terry to follow his lead. Terry stared at the picture and his body responded before his brain had the chance to step in. Terry looked at the picture for 3 full seconds, then looked at his daughter, asleep in the glider, chest rising and falling with the peace of someone who has no knowledge of anything. He stood up very carefully, transferred her to the crib in the way he'd gotten good at, hands staying with her until he was sure she wasn't going to wake up, and backed out of the nursery inch by inch. Closed the door with both hands on the knob so the latch barely made a sound. Jarvis started texting more. The second message was another picture. Jarvis had a new ski mask on, the rest of him entirely in view. His full body was on display as he bent over, fully displaying his whole. The kind of picture that made its point without needing a single word. Terry walked to the bedroom. He closed the door and sat the phone face up on the nightstand so he could FaceTime Jarvis. He grabbed the Vaseline from the top drawer, worked a smooth coat into his palm, and slid his hand down the length of his manhood. Jarvis answered immediately, still in the ski mask, already taking care of himself at the same pace. They fell into rhythm without discussion. Low voices, semi-dark rooms on both screens. The view of two people who had learned exactly what the other one needed. "I like it when you do that," Jarvis said. "Yeah." Terry's voice low and deep. "Yes, Daddy. Touch yourself like that for me." He leaned back on one hand, took himself in the other. His grip on himself tightened while his eyes closed slightly. They climbed the moment together. At nearly the same moment, both released. They looked at each other's eyes for a beat. Then Jarvis ended the call. Terry laid back on the bed for a minute before cleaning himself up and went to wash his hands in the master bath like none of that had just happened. He was in the kitchen getting a glass of water when he heard Claire's key in the lock. She came in, bright, shoes off at the door, keys on the hook, the easy motion of someone returning to a space she runs. "Has the baby gone down yet?" she said. "She knocked out at 9:30, he said. She nodded, satisfied, got herself a glass of water and stood at the counter across from him and drank half of it. They existed in the kitchen the way they usually did late, companionable, low maintenance, two people who had been married long enough that silence didn't need filling. Then Claire set her glass down. "I want to do a dinner," she said. He looked at her. "Here, this weekend." She was already in planning mode. He could see the shift, the slight organizing energy that came onto her face whenever she was planning something. "I want Simone to come. And I want you to invite Jarvis." Terry kept his face very still. His hand was resting on the counter, and he did not move it. "Why?" he said. His wife wanted a dinner. With Simone, who'd been in their lives as Claire's best friend for years. The college girl who texted too much, always a little too present at every gathering, and she wanted Jarvis there too. The same Jarvis who had been sneaking across the lawn to see her husband for the better part of 9 months. The man who had slept with her husband in this kitchen, in that hallway, against the wall in the baby's nursery, in almost every room of this house had her husband whispering his name. And now his wife was asking him to seat Jarvis at her dinner table next to Simone, like this was the Brady Bunch or something. "Can you text Jarvis or not?" she said again. Terry rolled his eyes and looked away as he picked up his water, still saying nothing. "I'll take that as a yes," Claire said. She refilled her glass and went upstairs to check on the baby. Terry stood in the kitchen by himself for a full minute after she left, running through the variables, the way he always did. The private arithmetic of a man who has been lying to Claire for 9 months. Something was off about tonight. Why did Claire want a dinner with all of them? He picked up his phone, opened him and Jarvis's text thread, still warm from their exchange 40 minutes ago, and typed, "My wife wants to do dinner this weekend. She said to invite you. She's up to something, but I don't know what." Saturday came like weather. Simone arrived at 6. Claire opened the door before she could knock, in a cream linen dress, hair loose, a single candle burning near the sink, the house carrying that particular warm amber light that felt different tonight, more intentional, like the lighting had been considered. Simone walked in, wearing a black wrap dress and silver hoops. She and Claire looked at each other for one full second in the doorway before Claire stepped aside to let her in. No hug? Hello? Just two women who have decided tonight is the night the truth comes out. Jarvis came next, knocked at 6:10, dressed like a man who'd received a warning he couldn't decipher and had decided to look good anyway. Claire let him in with a warmth that hit different than it ever had before. She handed him a glass of wine before he'd sat down. "This is my friend Simone," Claire said. Simone looked at him from where she was standing near the stove. "Hey." Jarvis knew her. Not well, but he knew her. He'd seen her at a handful of neighborhood things over the past year, always stationed right next to Claire. Always just a half step closer than a best friend needed to be. He'd clocked it once and moved on. Filed it under not his business. They had the vibe of two women who were almost certainly doing more than brunch when the neighbors went home. Standing in this kitchen, he understood he'd been right all along. "Hey," he said back. He took a seat at the table and looked around the kitchen. Claire was at the counter. Simone was at the stove. The front door opened and Terry came in from the garage. He'd been out there since 5, claiming he needed to find something. 30 minutes in, and the table had been building pressure under the pleasant surface, until Claire set her fork down. She folded her hands on the table and said, "Terry, I know what's been going on between you and Jarvis," she said. "Excuse me?" Terry said, trying to look shocked. "I know you two have been fucking," Claire said. She paused. "I want you both to understand. I'm not angry." Then she looked across the table at Simone. Simone set her fork down now. She'd been waiting for a seat at this table, and the patience of all those years was visible in exactly how still she was. "Terry," Claire said, "Simone is not just my best friend from college. We've been together for a long time, and the baby is ours, hers and mine." Jarvis leaned back slowly in his chair. "What kind of Maury episode did y'all invite me to?" Terry looked at Claire like he was seeing her from a completely different angle than the one he'd been using for years. "So, you're telling me you're a lesbian," he said, working through it out loud. "And the baby I thought was mine is yours, and your lesbian lover?" "Well, I guess, yeah, that's true," Claire said. "She's not yours biologically, but she could be all of ours to love." Terry stood up. He needed to move around to process what he was hearing. "So what exactly are you proposing? That we all just live as one big gay family?" Jarvis spread his hands. "This is some wild shit. 4 people, 1 house, and all their secrets are finally out. The man next door has a secret DL life 1 month later. The thing about having your whole life rearranged by a dinner party is that the morning after, you still have to get up and be a person. And the morning after that, and the one after that, and approximately 30 mornings later, Jarvis was still getting up and being a person, which meant fresh out of a shower with the bathroom still steaming and a playlist going. He was twerking to the second verse. Hands on the sink, towel on the floor. water still beating on his back, working it like the bathroom was his dance floor. He caught himself in the mirror mid-bounce and laughed out loud. He stood there, air drying, looking at himself. In the last month, Jarvis had been formally introduced to the secret girlfriend of the wife of the married man he'd been secretly sleeping with for almost a year. He had been to several group dinners at the same house he used to slip out the back door of, hoping Claire didn't catch him on his knees with her husband. The playlist moved into something slower, and he stopped twerking and just stood there being real with himself in the mirror for a second. He was genuinely considering this life. The whole arrangement, the polycool or whatever they were going to call it once Claire found the right book about it. It had all started with a married man who couldn't stop reaching for him in the dark. He dried off and got dressed. Across the lawn, inside the house that used to be the thing Jarvis navigated around in the dark, the baby had gone down for a nap. There is a silence that a house has when a baby finally falls asleep. Terry and Claire both knew this silence by now. They were sitting on the edge of their bed. Terry had been thinking about something since the last group dinner. He told Claire that even through everything, his secret down-low life as a masked man online, the secret affair with Jarvis, he had never once looked at their daughter and felt anything other than he was her father. That part of him had never been in question. Claire told him life was short. She said they both knew things about themselves they'd been lying about for years. She said she was done with the performance. And she wasn't going to spend another half-decade pretending. She said, who gives a fuck what anyone says? In the middle of Claire's grand standing, Terry found himself seeing what always made her beautiful to him. She always was a woman that did what she wanted and never cared what people thought. Something moved in him, and he kissed her before he could stop himself from doing it. They'd been so careful with each other. Two people sharing a house and a baby, and a secret arrangement, and somehow being extremely reasonable about all of it. They were tangled in the sheets before either of them could say another word. What happened between them was not the sex of people who barely knew each other. It was the connection of two people who had genuinely loved each other for years. And now, in the afternoon quiet of a baby's nap, remembering that there was still love underneath all of it, still real, still theirs in a way that didn't require explanation. Simone was standing in the baby aisle of a store, holding a onesie in yellow, small, soft, duck on the front, absurdly tiny in her hands, and doing what she did when she needed to think without interruption, which was move her body through a space and let the thoughts come. She had always wanted to be a mother. She'd known it long before she knew what to do with it, and it had run alongside every other thing she'd wanted in her life like a second river, always there, sometimes loud, sometimes just present. She and Claire had talked about it in college, the way you talk about futures, when futures still feel like hypotheticals. And then the years went by, and the hypothetical kept getting pushed down the line, and Simone kept choosing Claire. Because when you love someone the way she loved Claire, there isn't really a choice to make, there's just what you do. The baby was real now. Their baby. Hers and Claire's. Holding a yellow onesie in a Tuesday afternoon store, Simone let herself feel the full emotions of everything for the first time. She was also thinking about Terry. Simone had never thought Terry was quite right for Claire. It wasn't jealousy. Claire was an alpha woman, and Terry had always seemed like one of her projects. Simone had watched Claire pour energy into that version of a life for years. and understood why she'd needed it. She'd given Claire that room without holding it against either of them. What she needed to see now was something different. Whether Terry, this man who had spent years treating his own life like a secret, was actually capable of making genuine room for her. Later that night, the four of them sat around the table at the tail end of dinner, plates pushed to the side, the easy warmth of a meal that had gone well still settling in the room. Claire refilled her glass and set the bottle down with the quiet authority of someone who had one more agenda item before the dinner ended. "I need everyone to confirm they've read Chapter 7, she said. Nobody answered quickly enough for Claire's liking. Polygamy for Beginners, a step-by-step guide to hugging 3 people at once. It was the book Claire insisted everyone read. Jarvis glanced at Terry. Terry glanced at Simone. Simone glanced back at Jarvis. They all just grinned and said, "Well, guess we're doing this now." The ring light threw its warm red glow across Jarvis's living room, same as always. Jarvis was in a mask and an unbuttoned shirt, while on the other side of the camera was Terry. They had been filming for about 40 minutes. Their content had range. They were filming a mutual masturbation video dressed as masked cowboys. Their joint content account had grown quietly, which neither of them had entirely expected, and both of them were pretending not to be somewhat happy about it. What had started with Terry casually asking Jarvis to jump in on a video here and there had quietly evolved into a shared page, running on its own, growing. Terry cut the ring light. The room went back to its regular self. Just Jarvis's place. No baby monitor in sight, no Claire or Simone. Just the two of them in the mild and slightly ridiculous aftermath of what they'd been doing for the last hour. Terry let out a short, shaky laugh. The kind that slips out when your chest is too full for words. I've never been able to do this with a man before, he said. I've been close to men in all the ways that didn't matter. But with you, it's different. Terry leaned in and pressed a slow kiss on Jarvis's lips. The kind of kiss that said thank you without needing words. They just sat there. Ski mask off. 2 men, the ring light off, wrapped in the quiet of the night. A month in. 4 people. 1 block. 1 beautiful baby girl who is growing faster than any of them expected. And something like a polyamorous situationship blossoming between them all. The neighborhood still has no idea. At least not yet. If you're new to this story, check the description for links to all previous episodes. You're going to want the full story before this one. This is Chapter 7. 2 down low basketball coaches and the bottom they shared. Previously on, the married man next door has a secret DL Life Chronicles. Terry is a married man living a double life, a high school basketball coach by day, and a man with secrets his neighborhood and community have no idea about. His wife Claire has her own secret she's been keeping for 16 years. She's in love with Simone, her best friend. When everything came out at the dinner table, it didn't end the marriage, but it forced a life that seemed to work behind closed doors. Simone moved into Claire and Terry's house, and Terry still gets to fuck Jarvis. Terry's past has always been the one thing nobody fully accounted for. In this chapter, he watches Jarvis, the man he's been crossing the lawn for, get handled on his front porch by someone else. He sends a petty text message. It goes unanswered. And tonight is game 1. And the head coach on the other side of the court is a man Terry used to run dark rooms with. Jarvis had been telling himself the same story since he started sleeping with Terry. The story went like this. Terry was a good time. An unexpected, genuinely good time with a DL man who lived across the street and had a body that made Jarvis vulnerable and willing all at the same time. That was the story. Fun and low stakes. Now, the fantasy has turned into reality. The story now includes his wife and baby and the wife's lesbian lover. He had not signed up for any of that and needed a break. So he went out to the club. His friends, a booth in the back, and music loud enough to push everything else out his mind. He drank what he wanted and danced all night. He met a guy near the bar. Tall, broad, the kind of man whose height alone cleared a path through a crowd. He leaned down to say something in Jarvis's ear and didn't stop until Jarvis was laughing and leaning back into him. He wasn't taking no for an answer, and Jarvis wasn't giving it. They left together. They were loud coming up the block. Jarvis knew it and didn't fully care. He was drunk and the night was still in him. The drinks, the music, the looseness of his body. He was feeling open. The guy was laughing at something Jarvis said, kissing each other in between giggles. They stumbled onto the porch. They did not make it inside. The guy grabbed him at the door, one hand at his hip, the other at his shoulder, and turned him. Pressed him up against the porch railing with a soft force. Jarvis gripped the railing, dropped his head. He knew where this was going. He let the night air hit his face, while the guy worked his jeans down slow and deliberate and took his time about it, like time was something he had plenty of. The guy moved with a mature precision. He dropped down to his knees, spreading Jarvis's cheeks open, his tongue wasting no time drawing circles around the hole. Afterwards, what followed was warm, thick, and curved. The kind of feeling that makes you stop thinking about everything you were thinking about. Deep and steady as Jarvis gripped the railing tighter, pushing back onto the guy, trying not to make sounds because they were outside. Muffled, controlled, the sounds of two people keeping themselves just barely contained. At some point, Jarvis looked up. He could see across the street directly at the front window of Terry and Claire's house. The light was on downstairs, and in it, barely visible, a shape that looked like Terry. Or at least that's what Jarvis was imagining. Jarvis didn't look away. He held the railing and felt everything the guy was giving him and looked directly at that window. He didn't know if Terry could see him clearly in the dark, but he was turned on at the thought of Terry seeing him getting rammed on the porch by a guy he just met at the club. The heat spreading from his hips up his spine, the release building slowly, then the guy gripping his waist as he gushed and shook and went quiet against the railing. Afterwards, he straightened up, fixed his clothes, thanked the man, and sent him home with a smile. He went inside, alone. His phone buzzed before he crossed the threshold. A text message from Terry. I hope the dick was good. Across the street, Terry put his phone face down and held the baby and stared at the ceiling. He had been standing at that window watching the whole thing. He had sent that text knowing it was petty, but his jealousy got the best of him. The next day, we find Terry in a gym. Inside, the noise of Game 1, the squeak of sneakers on hardwood, the smell of a high school gymnasium that is the same in every city in America. He's been here for 6 years. 6 years of building something at this school that matters. Kids who trust him, parents who show up, an administration that looks at him and sees exactly what he needs them to see. A man, a coach, someone dependable, and then someone they can respect. The kind of man you point to when you want to show young people what they can be. That is why Terry's secret DL life was survival. He knew this community would take their love back if they knew the truth. He understood that standing on this sideline in the first game of the season, clipboard in hand, and doing his job as head coach. And then the doors on the other side of the gym opened, and Lonzo walked in. Terry did not react. He turned and said something to his assistant coach and made a note on his clipboard as he felt his entire nervous system feel the entrance of a man he had not seen in 11 years. He knew it was him before he fully looked. And something about the walk, the way Lonzo moved through a room. He was the basketball coach for the other team. He still looked like the kind of man who could talk the pants off anyone in the building and not raise his voice once to do it. The years had not done anything bad to him. They had, if anything, settled something in him that used to be potential, and now has matured to new levels. Lonzo found Terry's eyes across the gym before he went to his bench and got to work. They coached their teams through 4 quarters of basketball without speaking to each other. They called plays and pulled players and burned timeouts and paced their sidelines and were completely professional and completely aware of each other every moment of it. The game was good. Both teams played hard. The score stayed close until the 4th quarter when Terry's point guard made 3 consecutive decisions that were so correct they looked like luck and pulled the game open by 8. Terry's team won. In the stands, Claire ran into the Hendersons 2 minutes after she sat down. Simone watched it happen, watched Claire's body shift, the particular adjustment a person makes when they move from one version of themselves to another. The Hendersons were asking about the baby, and Claire was explaining and gesturing and being Claire, the version of Claire who lived in the neighborhood and sat on committees and kept her life organized and private. And when Mrs. Henderson turned on Simone with the open expression of a woman waiting for an introduction, Claire said, "This is my friend Simone. She's been helping with the baby." The word friend lasted less than a second in the air. It took up permanent residence in Simone's chest. She smiled. She said something pleasant as she held the baby and watched the rest of the game with the silence of a woman who was pissed off and was waiting for the right moment to say it. The handshake line moved fast. Players first, then coaches. When Terry and Lonzo reached each other in the middle of the court, they shook hands the way coaches shake hands. Firm, professional, one pump. Inside that single pump, Lonzo noticed Terry's body first. He noticed the way Terry had grown into himself, the width of his shoulders, the way he stood in his slacks, his bulge sitting comfortably visible. He noticed the way the fabric sat at the back of those slacks. He remembered the dark rooms, Terry's body, the way they used to work, a room. Terry felt the roughness of Lonzo's hand and went somewhere else for a half second. Dry and strong. Those hands had not changed. He remembered what those hands felt like when they were all in a room together and the lights were off and nobody had a name. Lonzo thought, he got finer. It's criminal. Terry thought, 11 years and this man still looks exactly like that. "Good game," Terry said. "Thanks, coach," Lonzo said, the corner of his mouth curling up. "You got a good team on your hands." Terry heard himself say it before he could stop himself. "You should come through tonight. We're just chilling, post-game drinks." Lonzo looked at him knowing exactly what that meant. "Send me the address. I'm sure you still have my number." Outside the gym in the parking lot, Simone did not raise her voice. She never did when she was really hurt. She got quiet instead. She told Claire that she counted every introduction, every time she was introduced as friend. Every moment Claire looked at someone she knew from before her, and Simone came clean about their love affair. This was supposed to be their moment in public together. Claire, Simone, and Terry as a new kind of family at a basketball game like any other family in those stands. Claire started to explain. "People don't know the full story. It's complicated. I wasn't hiding you. I was just..." Simone reached into the stroller. She picked up the baby, the way a mother picks up a child. The baby settled against her shoulder as Simone turned toward the car without another word. Claire followed her and the baby. Terry texted Jarvis from the parking lot. "Come to the house tonight. Got someone I want you to meet." Terry and Lonzo were on the patio by the time the sun finished going down. 2 coaches after a win, drinks in hand. The ease of men who knew each other from before, they were who they are now. They talked the way they knew how to talk. They talked about basketball, their schools. 11 years of surface conversation before either of them touched anything more deeply. They'd been tag team kings in dark rooms at circuit parties, two DL tops who moved through a space like they owned it. Last time Terry saw Lonzo, he was packing up to move out of state, freshly engaged and playing the straight life. They'd bonded over their parallel performances, good men, good faces, good secrets. What Terry didn't know, Lonzo's wife had eventually found him in bed with a man. The divorce was fast. He moved back to the state quietly, took a head coaching job a few hours away, and kept it moving. They were laughing about something when the back gate opened. Jarvis came through with his hands in his jacket pockets, the unanswered text from Terry still sitting in his phone. He didn't know what Terry's come-through text meant tonight. Didn't know if it was the jealousy talking or something else, but he'd come over anyway. He wasn't sure what he was walking into. Lonzo's eyes moved all over Jarvis when he saw him. The kind of look a man gives when he has just found new prey. Terry stood when Jarvis came through the gate. "Aye, come here. I want you to meet somebody." He gestured between them. "Jarvis, this is Lonzo. He's the head coach of the team we just beat today." He said it was easy, almost too easy, like it was just a basketball thing. Lonzo extended his hand, gripped it firm and held it just a half second longer than a regular handshake. "Good to meet you." His eyes moved over Jarvis in a way that was subtle enough to pass for friendly and full enough of intention. He ran his tongue slowly across his bottom lip while Jarvis's hand was still in his. "Terry told me good things about you." Jarvis clocked everything that was going on. The grip, the lip, the way Lonzo's eyes hadn't fully moved off him yet. He knew this language. He could smell two tops looking for a mission. "Funny, because he didn't tell me anything about you," Jarvis said, looking at Terry. Terry smiled. "Come on, let's head to the pool house now that Jarvis is here." It sat at the far end of the yard, a converted pool house turned into Terry's personal universe. Part Airbnb, part man cave, the place he went when the main house had too many people's feelings in it. They settled into the environment easy, music already going, low and deep. Terry cracked the mini fridge. Lonzo dropped onto the couch. The weed came out 20 minutes in. They passed it around and the conversation loosened the way conversations do when three men are in a small, warm space with nowhere to be. Lonzo and Terry fell into an old pattern. Half sentences, referenced laughter, the comfortable shorthand of men who used to run together. But their words kept circling Jarvis, finding him, pulling him into the conversation in a different way. "You know what, Lonzo?" Terry said, exhaling slow, passing the blunt. "Me and Jarvis have been spending a lot of time together." Lonzo looked at Jarvis, seeming to know what a lot of time together really meant. He pulled the blunt and passed it. The game started like that. Have you ever? The kind of questions that sound like nothing until they don't. Have you ever been in a room like this before? Have you ever done something you couldn't tell anybody about? Have you ever wanted something you weren't supposed to want and just got it anyway? Each question got them closer, each answer loosening something between them. Then Jarvis said it, smoke still in his lungs. "I know how to suck some good dick too." The room went still for exactly 1 second. Lonzo looked at him. "Is that what you've been doing for Terry?" "Okay, prove it." Jarvis took the blunt from Lonzo's fingers slow, took a long pull, held it, passed it back with the handoff. Then he looked at Terry, almost like he was looking for permission. "You want to see me do it?" Terry didn't blink. "I want you to make my old friend feel welcomed." Lonzo man spread it on the couch like a man who had been waiting for exactly this. He was already reaching for himself, making it easy, pulling himself free while his eyes stayed on Jarvis the whole time. Jarvis dropped to his knees between Lonzo's legs and took his time getting there. He pressed his lips to the tip first, soft, a greeting. Rubbed the length of him against his jaw and cheek, feeling the weight and the warmth of it. Looked up. Lonzo was watching him with that patient, unhurried expression. The look of a man who knew he was about to be taken care of and planned to enjoy every second. Jarvis licked him slow, base to tip. Took the tip into his mouth and worked it with his tongue, learning the shape, coaxing. Lonzo's breath changed. His hand came down easy and rested at the back of Jarvis's head, not forcing, just holding. Jarvis went deeper. Felt Lonzo harden against the back of his throat, gagged slightly, worked through it, let his mouth get wet and sloppy and good. He pulled back, licked his balls one at a time, slow and thorough, his chin resting at the base while Lonzo made a low sound in his throat and gripped the cushion. Ah! Terry had moved, sitting beside Lonzo now, close, watching with that expression Jarvis could recognize. Jarvis understood. He took them both in his hands, going back and forth, mouth on one dick, while his fist twisting on the other, trading attention, working both men up slow and equal. The room filled with low sounds and held breath, and the specific quiet of men trying to keep themselves together. Jarvis liked Terry looking at him like that. He wasn't going to pretend he didn't want exactly this. These two men, this room, whatever this was about to be. Terry had delivered him a man fit for his appetite. "You good?" Lonzo asked Jarvis. "I'm good. You sure you can handle me?" Jarvis said. Lonzo kissed him slowly. Terry watched and felt the heat of it move through him like something he'd been holding back. He knew the rhythm of Lonzo in a room. He knew what it felt like to work alongside this man, the way they used to move together in those dark rooms, reading each other without language. Two people who understood the assignment. Nobody announced it. Bodies just moved toward what they wanted because that's what bodies do when three men are in a room and done pretending. Jarvis was wet and ready by the time either of them worked him open, and the stretch of it made him grip the couch arm and curse under his breath and press back for more. Lonzo stepped up first. Naturally, guests should feast first. Lonzo moved the way a man moves when he's been starving and finally let himself eat. He hadn't slept with a man in 2 years. He had been disciplined, buried himself in coaching and women who didn't ask questions he couldn't answer. Told himself he was done with this, that the divorce was the last time he'd let this part of himself cost him something. And then Jarvis. He worked him open with his fingers first, patient, reading every sound, every shift of Jarvis's hips. And Jarvis arched into his hand like a door swinging open. Lonzo slid inside him slow, every inch deliberate. He felt Jarvis grip tight around him, warm, snug, wrapping him like something custom. And he stopped breathing for a second. Goddamn, he'd forgotten. Or tried to forget. But Jarvis's walls fit him like a glove, like a feeling he'd been running from for 2 years. And it was too good and too exactly right to pretend otherwise. He gripped Jarvis's hips and stayed there. Full, still, just feeling it. Just letting Jarvis feel it too. "That's it," he said, voice low, almost to himself. "That's it right there." Terry was at Jarvis's mouth while Lonzo was behind him. Terry whispered in his ear. "Good, there you go. Give it to him like you did for that guy on the porch." Terry wanted Jarvis to know he'd seen everything, and Jarvis wanted to let him watch. Jarvis took Lonzo in deep, warm and wet and willing. Lonzo noticed how Terry and Jarvis had more than just fuck buddy energy between them, and he had become a new character in a play already in progress. The three of them found a flow the way people find flows in dark rooms. Jarvis taking all of it, every stroke, every pull, the full weight of two men who wanted him, and shaking with it, gushing around Lonzo's thick length as it worked him open over and over. The sounds in the room were like a symphony. Just 3 men and what their bodies were doing without apology. Then Jarvis saw the headlights sweep across the front of the house. Yo, he didn't need to finish the sentence. All 3 of them clocked it through the small window, headlights turning into the driveway. Claire, Simone, and the baby were arriving back home. They'd told Terry they wanted to give him and the guys some space. They knew what a post-game celebration looked like with the weed smoke and the loud music. But space had a time limit, and that time limit was right the fuck now. Jarvis was still gripping the couch arm. Lonzo was still buried inside him. And Terry was still licking Lonzo's nipples, encouraging him with every stroke. Nobody moved for half a second, and everybody moved at once. Jarvis came first, couldn't stop it, his whole body seizing and releasing hard, hips bucking back onto Lonzo as he flooded and gushed and made a sound he couldn't have stopped if he'd tried. Lonzo a beat behind, buried deep, finishing with a low exhale and his face pressed to Jarvis's shoulder, gripping his waist with both rough hands, long and shaking. Terry last, looking up at those headlights still visible, his whole chest full of something too big to name, releasing deep and final like the last thing he was allowed before everything went back to normal. They had exactly 4 minutes. They used all 4. Clothes found, weed cleared, drinks straightened. By the time Claire was getting the baby out of the car and Simone was coming up the front walk, Lonzo and Jarvis were coming through the back gate like they were just wrapping up a conversation. Terry was right behind them, fresh cup in hand, easy smile. "Long night?" Lonzo asked Claire, completely smooth. Claire laughed. "Long day?" she said. She didn't look twice. Later that night, after Lonzo had gone and Jarvis had headed back across the street, the house settled into its end-of-night rhythm. Simone was in the nursery, rocking the baby down in the dark. Claire and Terry were in their bedroom. Claire sat on the edge of the bed, with the exhausted look of a woman who had been performing all day and was finally taking the costume off. She told Terry about Simone, that she was upset, that it had gotten quiet in the car, that Simone hadn't said another word the whole ride home. Then Claire said the thing she hadn't said to anyone yet. "I think I made a mistake." Terry looked at her. "I thought I was ready." She picked at the edge of her sleeve. "Out and proud. You doing your thing, me doing mine, all of us in this house being exactly what we are." She shook her head slow. "But then I got to that gym and I saw people I knew and I couldn't do it. I introduced her as a friend and I don't even know why I did it. It just came out." Terry looked at her for a long moment. Then he laughed. Not mean. Just the laugh of a man whose wife has just confirmed what he already knew. "Claire?" He shook his head. "I told you that poly shit wasn't going to work anyway." She cut her eyes at him. "That is not helpful." "I know." He was still smiling. "But I told you." "You told me." She threw a pillow at him. "Okay, you told me. So now what? How do we fix this?" Terry caught the pillow, his head, because neither of them had the answer tonight. Across the street, Jarvis was back home. He was sitting on his toilet with the expression of a man processing the last 48 hours, one biological function at a time. His body was releasing everything it had been holding, all of it, and he was just sitting there, letting it happen. Staring at his bathroom tile, doing a quiet internal inventory of his life choices. 48 hours ago, he had brought a man home from the club and gotten railed on his own front porch. Tonight, he had been in a man cave 3-way with Terry's old sex party friend, who was also a high school basketball coach and a man who moved through a room like a loaded weapon. He was living what was objectively a bottom's dream, right now. He had no regrets, not one. He flushed, washed his hands, and smiled at himself in the mirror. Down the hall in the nursery, Simone rocked the baby in the dark. The house was quiet around her. The baby's breath was the only sound. small and even and completely unbothered by everything happening in the world outside this room. Simone looked down at her face, felt the small weight of her against her chest. She had been someone's friend today. At a basketball game, in front of people, with this baby in her arms, she had been a friend. She rocked, back and forth. The baby's eyes fluttered. The thoughts started small, the way dangerous thoughts always do. What if? Just 2 words, small enough to feel like nothing. What if she just took her? What if she just took the baby and left? And went somewhere that was theirs. Somewhere nobody introduced Simone as a friend. Somewhere this baby looked up and saw her and knew, without anybody having to explain it, that she was somebody. She rocked the baby to sleep, as she kept thinking about the possibility of it all. This episode contains explicit content, strong language, and adult situations. Listener discretion is advised. This is The Married Man Next Door, has a secret DL Life Chronicles. Check the description for links to all previous episodes. The highway was almost empty, and Simone had her hands at 10 and 2 like she was still teaching somebody how to drive. The dashboard said 6:47 p.m. The sun was getting low and orange on her left. The baby was in the car seat behind her, awake but quiet. Her phone was face up on the passenger seat, and when it lit up with one word, Jarvis, she did not touch it. She did not decline it either. She let it ring all the way through, and when the screen went dark again, the only sound in the car was the tires on the road and the small, steady breath of a baby who didn't know everything had come apart today. The speedometer climbed 70, 75. Her face in the rear view did not look like a woman running from anything. It looked like a woman who had run out of rooms to be small in and was finally building one of her own. 4 hours earlier, she had been in bed with Claire, telling her she could still make this shitty arrangement work. 3 hours earlier, she had been on her knees in the kitchen with Terry's dick in her mouth, trying to convince herself it would make them one big, happy family. 2 hours earlier, she had been packing a bag she had mentally packed 100 times. 1 hour earlier, she had been standing over a crib looking down at a sleeping baby and deciding, for the first time in 16 years, that there was one person in the whole house who was going to get to choose what happened next, and that person was going to be her. Tonight, she was the only motherfucker in the car who knew where they were going. And that was the first time, and she had been the only one in any room who knew a goddamn thing. The phone buzzed a second time with a text she did not read, and Simone just kept driving. The morning that started like every other morning. Simone woke up at 7:14 in the morning with Claire's back pressed against her chest and Claire's coconut-oiled hair in her mouth. And for about 40 seconds, she let herself believe that this was the life she had been working toward the whole time. It was her night. Every other night in the master bedroom had been Terry's compromise, his clumsy, quiet way of saying he understood what he had let get built under his roof. Nobody in the house used the word schedule. Everybody in the house kept count. Terry was in the guest room down the hall. The baby monitor was dark. Somewhere outside, a neighbor's sprinkler clicked on. Simone pressed her mouth to the back of Claire's neck, and Claire made the small sound she had been making since they were 22 years old. And Simone, who had loved this woman through 2 long-term boyfriends, a marriage, a pregnancy, and a living arrangement that made less sense every Sunday, slid her hand under the bedsheet and found Claire already touching herself. They didn't talk. They had stopped needing the beginning of anything a long time ago. Simone rolled on top of her, and Claire's thighs opened like a door that had never been locked. No toys, no hurry. Skin on skin. Simone hooked her leg over Claire's and pressed down and found the angle their bodies had memorized over 16 years and hundreds of stolen afternoons and one marriage in between. She rocked slow. Claire rocked back. Claire's hand came up to Simone's jaw and held it there the way a person holds a thing they are scared will float away if they let go. Simone leaned into the hand. Claire came first, with her mouth open and silent against Simone's shoulder. Simone came second, slower, forehead pressed to forehead, a sound coming out of her that she had not known she was going to make. They stayed like that for a long minute afterward, legs tangled, chests rising and falling out of rhythm, the ceiling fan pushing a thin stream of cool air across sweat that had nowhere else to go. Simone said she loved her. Claire said she knew. Simone said she wanted to figure this out, really figure it out. She was ready to do the hard part. She wanted to build something permanent. Claire was quiet for a long time with her hand still on Simone's jaw. And then she said the sentence that broke Simone in half. "Baby, this ain't no fairy tale." Simone pulled her head back and looked at her. Claire sat up against the headboard and pulled the sheet up over her chest like she suddenly needed a border. She told Simone she had been thinking about something for 3 weeks, and she didn't want to say it on a morning like this. She told her she loved her. She told her she had been loving her for years, and she was going to keep loving her until she died. And then she told her that living in a house with her secret lesbian lover and her down-low husband and their baby was not the dream Claire had thought it was. Some nights she just wanted her fucking house back. Some mornings she woke up and couldn't remember what day it was because she didn't know whose bed she was supposed to be in. And she loved Simone too damn much to keep pretending none of that was true. Simone sat up. The sheet dropped off her chest. Her stomach did the thing it had been doing for 3 weeks every time Claire got too quiet at dinner. She was not going to let this be the conversation. She had planned a softer morning than this. She had planned sex and slow talking, and maybe, if the sex was good enough, Claire would finally realize she needed to leave Terry and marry her. So Simone did what a person like her does when they feel a door closing in on them. They take everyone down with them. She said the next thing that came into her head. And the next thing that came into her head was the most dangerous sentence she had said up till this point. What if she got closer to Terry? What if she and Terry had something going on too? Then it wasn't her and Claire on one side and him on the other. Then it was all of them. Same house, same bed. And Claire turned her head slowly and looked at her the way she had never looked at her in 16 years. Claire's voice got low. "Simone, you want to fuck my husband now?" Simone opened her mouth. Claire kept going. "I thought you didn't even like Dick." Simone said she didn't. She was just saying she would do anything to make this shit work. Anything. She meant that. Claire looked at the baby monitor like she was praying for the baby to wake up and save her from Simone's words. The baby did not wake up. Claire got out of the bed and pulled on the t-shirt from the chair and walked past Simone without looking at her and said over her shoulder, "This is too goddamn much for the morning. I'm going to check on the baby." And then she was gone. Simone sat on the edge of the bed for a long time with the sheet bunched in her lap. The sun came through the blinds in thin yellow stripes across her thighs. The ceiling fan kept turning. She was furious. She was embarrassed. She was still wet from 15 minutes ago when Claire had her fingers inside her, with nowhere for that feeling to go. And underneath all of it, there was a voice she had been pretending not to hear for 3 weeks that said, "Go to Terry anyway. He's the easiest one in this house. He's the one who's been waiting for you to come onto him, and he is too weak to his own dick to tell you no." Simone stood up. She put on her robe. The voice in her head was not guiding her anymore. It was commanding her. It had taken the wheel sometime between last Tuesday and this morning, and Simone had stopped fighting it. She could feel her own mind splitting. One half of her standing outside herself screaming, "What the fuck are you doing?" And the other half already walking toward the stairs with a plan so desperate and so unhinged that no sane woman would have followed it past the first thought. But Simone was not a sane woman this morning. She had not been a sane woman in weeks. She had been a woman slowly losing her grip on the one thing she had ever wanted, and her brain had decided, without her permission, that if she could not keep it with love, she was going to keep it with whatever her body could offer to the next person willing to take it. Terry was at the coffee machine in his sweats and yesterday's t-shirt when she came down the stairs. He had heard yelling voices through the wall earlier, and he had not listened on purpose, because listening on purpose to what happened in the master bedroom on a Simone night was not a thing Terry had agreed to when he agreed to this arrangement. He had agreed to the arrangement because he loved Claire, and he owed her. His own secret life had not left him any ground to stand on when Claire finally said what she needed. He was pouring the second cup when he heard bare feet on the kitchen tile behind him, and by the time he turned around, the temperature in the kitchen had already changed, and he knew who it was before she even spoke to him. Simone said good morning. Terry said good morning back. She walked past him to the fridge, close enough that her shoulder brushed his arm, and she opened the fridge, and she didn't take a single thing out. Terry asked if Claire was still asleep, and Simone said no. She was upstairs with the baby. He asked if she was good. She said she was tired. He asked if she had a hard night. She closed the refrigerator door and turned to face him and said, "No, but she had a long morning." Simone stepped closer into him. She did not ask anything. She just put her hand flat on his chest, and she slid it down slow, past his sternum, past his stomach to the waistband of his sweats, and then she cupped him through the fabric. Terry's body went still. His hand was still holding the damn coffee cup. Simone started working his growing erection through his sweats without saying a word, and Terry got hard in under a minute because Terry was and had always been a man whose lust did not check credentials. His dick did not care whose hand was on it. It had never cared. That was the single most reliable thing about him and the single most unreliable thing about him. He said her name once, soft, and then again, softer. Trying to tell her to stop but couldn't deny it felt good. She told him to shush. She asked him if he wanted her to stop. The part of him that was Claire's husband wanted Simone to stop. The part of him that had been fucking everything that moved since he was 19 did not. He set the coffee cup on the counter. He did not say yes. He did not say no. He did not stop her, and not stopping her was its own decision. Simone dropped to her knees on his kitchen floor. She pulled the waistband of his sweats down, and his fat slong was already out before she even needed to reach for it. She wrapped her hand around the base of it and looked up at him. And for a second, just a second, Terry saw her for who she really was. He saw that Simone was not on her knees because she wanted him. He thought, this woman is out of her mind, but if she wants to suck on his morning wood, then so be it. She was on her knees because she wanted something from him, and his dick was the shortest route to it. And he was starting to realize it, and he knew it. And he still did not stop her. She put her mouth on him. One lick. A second that went deeper than the first. A third that made him close his eyes for a second too long. Later, Terry would not be able to tell anybody whether it was 2 seconds or 5. It was not long. Everything that followed was going to happen in the space of what could have been a commercial break, and it was going to cost him the rest of his damn life. The kitchen door opened. Claire was standing in the doorway with the baby on her hip. Nobody moved, and nobody spoke, and the refrigerator hummed, and the coffee maker beeped that the second cup was done. Simone took her mouth off him in the slowest motion a body had ever made, and did not get up off the floor right away. She stayed on her knees, and she looked at Claire, and Claire looked back, and the look that passed between those two women was a conversation compressed into 4 seconds. Terry pulled his sweats up with hands that would not stop shaking, and he said Claire's name, and Claire did not say anything at all. She did not scream. She did not cry. She did not drop the baby. She shifted the baby from one hip to the other like she was just moving a grocery bag, and she turned around and she walked out of the kitchen, and the back of her head disappeared around the corner. And Terry stood there in his own house with his dick wet and his wife walking away from him and her lover still on her knees on the tile. And the only sound in the house was the coffee maker finishing a pot. Nobody was going to drink. Simone got up. She did not look sorry. She said she was sorry, but her mouth said one thing and her face said a different thing entirely. And she walked past him without touching him and went up the stairs. Terry did not move for a long time. When he finally moved, it was to the kitchen sink, where he washed Simone's saliva off with soap and a paper towel like an animal, and hated himself for every single second of it. He did not know how long he stood in that kitchen. He knew the coffee got cold. He knew the baby started crying somewhere upstairs and stopped again without him going up to see. He knew that at some point Simone had walked back down the stairs, through the hall and into the master bedroom, and closed the door. And then the doorbell rang, and Terry's stomach went to the floor before his brain even caught up, because nobody came to this house on a Saturday morning unannounced, except the wrong kind of person. He walked to the door and looked through the peephole. It was Dion, Jarvis's best friend. Dion was on his front porch in a fresh lineup and a fitted shirt with his hand in his pocket, and a little smile on his face like he was stopping by a friend's house on a Saturday to borrow a grill. He opened the door 2 inches and asked him what the fuck he was doing here. And Dion's smile got wider the way smiles only get wider on men who already know the answer to their own question. Dion told him to come outside real quick before he rang the bell a second time, because he'd hate for Claire to have to answer it. Terry looked over his shoulder into his own dark hallway. Nobody was in the hallway, but Claire was upstairs, and Simone was upstairs, and the baby was somewhere between them, and the last thing Terry needed was a man he had fucked 4 times in his own truck. standing on his porch saying his name loud enough for any neighbor walking a dog to hear. Terry told him to go around back. Meet him in the guest house. Don't ring the bell again. Don't knock. Just go. Dion said, "Yes, Daddy." Terry told him to not call him that on his fucking porch. Dion laughed and walked down the porch steps and around the side of the house like he had been invited to do exactly that his entire life. And Terry closed the door and put his forehead against the wood and stayed there for a full 30 seconds. He had been in a lot of bad days in his life. He had been in a lot of mornings where his secret life and his real life had almost shaken hands. He could not remember a single one that had done this much damage in these few hours, and the day was nowhere near done with him. Yet. The first text from Dion had come at 11:48 p.m. on the night of the gender reveal, 9 months earlier. Terry had been in bed next to his pregnant wife, in the dark. The house finally empty of cousins and HOA neighbors and the smell of cake. His phone had buzzed on the nightstand. The message had said, "You gonna pretend you didn't feel me trying to get you attention earlier?" He did feel Dion's eyes on him all afternoon, at the drinks table, next to Jarvis, silently, watching. He had typed back, "Who this?" knowing exactly who it was but needing deniability. Something to point to later if those texts ever saw the light of day. Dion replied, "I want you solo next time without him." Terry knew the man he was referring to was Jarvis. He guessed their threesome a while back wasn't good enough. Jarvis deleted the text thread and turned the phone face down and laid in the dark next to his wife. 2 days later, Dion sent question marks and Terry texted him, "Be careful texting me, bruh. Don't make things messy." The text thread continued to escalate on its own when Dion began flooding Terry's phone with photos and clips. Dion was saying things like, "He don't even want you like that. He just keeping you close for the plot." Terry knew it was all bullshit, but one video clip had him stuck one day. Terry ended up replying, and that's how he ended up swimming in Dion's waters 4 times in his truck and never telling Jarvis. The first time Terry and Dion had sex, it had been in Terry's truck, 2 streets over from the cul-de-sac on a cut-through road nobody used after dark. 1 streetlight at the end of the block, and nothing else for 4 blocks but trash bins and somebody's half-built addition. The windows of Terry's F-150 had gone foggy in under 4 minutes. Dion had climbed over the console into the driver's seat while Terry had leaned the seat back as far as it would go, and Dion had settled on top of him with his knees bracketing Terry's hips, and the center console jabbing him in the thigh the whole time, and neither of them had stopped to fix it. Terry had pulled him down by the back of his neck. It was fast. It was reckless. Terry had known, the whole time, that Claire was 6 minutes away expecting him to come home with nighttime diapers. Dion had known, the whole time, that Jarvis was probably across the cul-de-sac on his own porch with a glass of wine in his hand, not knowing where his friend had driven off to. That knowledge, that both of them were betraying 2 different people at the same moment, had been the single hottest thing about it for both of them, and they had both known it was the single hottest thing, and they both kept going anyway. After, Dion had lain across Terry's chest in the driver's seat, breathing hard, smiling up at the ceiling of the truck cab like he had won something in a contest nobody else had been told about. Terry's phone had buzzed in the cup holder, and Claire had texted, "Hey babe, when you coming home? We out of diapers." Terry had texted back, 10 minutes, sorry, long line at Target. Dion read the text over his shoulder and laughed. Pleased, such an asshole laugh. He called Terry a whole piece of work? Terry told him to get the fuck out of his truck. Dion said, "Yes, Poppy." And Terry told him to stop fucking calling him that. And Dion laughed the whole way back to his own car. That had been the first time. There had been 3 more after that over the course of 5 months. Not enough to be serious, just enough to be a pattern. And exactly the number of times Terry preferred, because 3 to 5 was the sweet spot where a man could still call a thing nothing, right up until somebody showed up on his front porch on a Saturday morning and turned it into something. Terry walked into the guest house out back through the side door. Dion was already inside, sitting on the leather couch with his legs spread wide and his arms stretched across the back of it like he owned the deed to the building. Terry told Dion, "What the hell is this?" And Dion smiled at him with his head tilted and told him to lock the door. Terry said, "Don't tell me what to do in my own goddamn house." Dion said, "Lock it anyway." Terry locked it. And then he turned around and looked at the man he had let talk his dick into trouble for 9 months, and he understood for the first time, fully, that Dion had never been a man who was going to stay quiet because Terry asked him to. Dion was not an accident. Dion was a man who had made a decision about Terry's life on the night of the gender reveal, and had been moving steadily toward this exact Saturday morning for 9 months. Terry had been the last person in their little 2-man conversation to figure that out. Dion laid it out flat. Either Terry started answering his fucking phone again, or Dion was going to walk across the cul-de-sac right now and ring Jarvis's doorbell and tell Jarvis every single thing he and Terry had been doing in the truck for the last 5 months. Or he was going to walk back to the front of this very house and ring this doorbell and tell Claire. Or maybe even both. He said he wasn't picky. He said he had all 3 options on the table today. And today was the day he was going to pick. Terry asked him why. Dion stood up and told him he was tired of being just another truck fuck. He said Jarvis had been Terry's thing for 2 years, and everybody treated Jarvis like the love story. And Jarvis didn't even want Terry for real. Jarvis just liked keeping Terry around because Terry had the stroke of a god, plus some of that toxic drama he liked from time to time. He said Dion, had been giving Terry his whole attention. Texts, photos, the whole program, and all he had been getting back was 3 weeks of being ghosted. He said not today. He said not in his life. He said Jarvis had been getting the version of Terry that Dion wanted, and he was done watching it from the sidelines. Terry tried to explain the morning he's had. He told Dion that his wife just caught her secret lesbian lover giving him head in his kitchen no more than 2 hours ago. Dion blinked. Then Dion actually started laughing and told Terry, "Goddamn, your dick don't do nothing but cause trouble." Terry said, "Yeah, so that's why you gotta leave. I can't deal with this right now." And then Dion stopped laughing because Dion had come over to get what he came for. So he walked across the room until he was 2 feet from Terry, and all the humor went out of his face. He said, "So give me what you wanted or I'm gonna walk out that front door and make your day 10 times worse." He put his hand on Terry's chest. He slid it down to his belt. Terry's head was a fucking hurricane at this point. He was furious at Dion for standing in his own guest house holding his entire household hostage. He was furious at himself for every single text he had ever answered back, every single night in that truck on that cut-through street, every single time he had let his dick vote louder than his brain for the last 25 fucking years of his life. He was furious at his wife for being upstairs. He was furious at Simone for being upstairs too. He was furious at Jarvis for being across the street not knowing a thing. He was furious that he had made it this far and had still not learned how to say no to a hand on his chest. He grabbed Dion by the back of the neck and shoved him against the wall, and he told him if he wanted it, fine, he could have it. But he was going to shut up and take it because this was going to be the last time. Dion smiled against the wall. He said, "Yes, Papi, I want you to punish me." He spun him around and bent him over the arm of the couch, and he did not take his time with any part of it. He did not warm him up. He pulled Dion's pants down just enough and laid into him the way a man drives into somebody he is trying to get out of his life, not somebody he wants to keep. Fast, hard, mean. His forearm braced across the back of Dion's shoulders to keep him pinned down. Dion was loving every second of it and making it known. Terry was furious with every stroke. They were both getting what they had come to this room for, and neither one of them was going to feel good about a damn thing afterwards. Terry grabbed Dion and moved him over near the bar and sat him on the bar stool. Terry told him to hold himself right there and not to move. He spit on his hand and swirled the tip of his hard jock around Dion's hole, watching it open for him. Dion was ready for this. His walls gave way like a 24-hour corner store, open for business anytime, and Terry walked right in. That was probably why Terry always came back to Dion. The man fed every slutty impulse Terry had ever tried to bury. Dion planted his hands on the bar and pushed back against him. Terry slid in and positioned himself deep, filling him in one stroke. Dion felt every inch instantly, his whole body clenching around Terry like it was trying to keep him there. Terry was full of all the frustration of the morning, Claire's silence, Simone's mouth, his own weakness, and he gave Dion every bit of it in each stroke, hoping post-nut clarity would buy him enough time to get this man far away from his house and give him a chance to repair whatever the hell was going on upstairs with Claire and Simone. Terry finished with his hand planted on the small of Dion's back and his jaw so tight his back teeth hurt. He pulled out without saying a word. He didn't even want Dion to think the sex was satisfying to him. Dion stood up slowly, pulling his pants up, still breathing hard, still smiling, fixing his shirt in the reflection of the flat-screen TV. "See?" Dion said. "That wasn't hard, was it? That's all I wanted?" Terry walked to the mini-fridge and grabbed a water bottle and drank half of it standing with his back towards Dion. When Terry turned around, he told Dion to get his ass out of his house. Dion started to say his name. Terry said it again. "Out. We're done. I don't give a fuck what you tell to who. Run, tell Jarvis. Run, tell Claire. Run, tell whoever the fuck you want. I'm done. You wanted a reaction? You got one. You got my whole nut for free this morning. Now get out my back gate before somebody sees you." Dion was still smiling. Dion said, "Okay, Daddy, one more time." Terry pointed at the door. Dion walked to the side door with the smug satisfaction of a man who had come to a house to collect on a debt and had collected interest on top of it. He put his hand on the doorknob. And when Dion opened the door, Jarvis was standing on the other side of it. Jarvis was in a faded t-shirt and basketball shorts and one of his ratty pairs of slides, because he had walked over from his own house without changing when he'd realized he hadn't heard from Terry all morning. They had plans for breakfast that morning. He had come around the side of Terry's house. He saw the side gate was open. He had been about to knock on the door when Dion opened it from the inside. And now he was standing face to face with his best friend, a man he had introduced to Terry, a man he had trusted in his own home. And that man was tucking in a fresh fucked shirt and smiling at him with the leftover smell of the last 10 minutes all over him. And Terry was behind him at the mini fridge with his back turned and his waistband still crooked. Jarvis's face did the whole math in under 5 seconds. Confusion to recognition to betrayal to rage. And his face showed every single step of the math while it did it. Dion saw Jarvis's face. Without thinking, Jarvis lunged at Dion. He got both of his hands in the front of Dion's shirt and drove him backward into the wall so hard the framed jersey jumped on its nail, and he was yelling before his feet caught up to the rest of him. "How's you sleeping with the man I introduced you to?" His voice filled the room. Dion was laughing. Still laughing. That was the whole problem with Dion. You could pin Dion to a wall and Dion would laugh because some part of Dion had been trying to get pinned to a wall by Jarvis since the night he sent the first text to Terry 9 months ago. Jarvis shook him by the shirt. Jarvis was screaming now. "You was my friend. And this how we doing each other?" Dion, still smiling against the wall, said, "I've been jealous of you since the day I met you, bruh. You get everything. The attention, the feelings, the whole man. I just wanted to see how far I could push it before something broke. Turns out, it was today." Terry got across the room in 2 steps and put both hands flat on Jarvis's chest and told him to let him go. Jarvis, let him go. Jarvis did not let go. Jarvis's foot caught the edge of the chair, the ridiculous leather chair Terry had bought on clearance at some point and never sat in it once. And Jarvis went sideways with Dion still in his fists, and they both went down. The framed jersey came off the wall on the way down, and the glass cracked in the corner. Dion was on his back on the floor with Jarvis on top of him, swinging mostly air, because Jarvis had never actually thrown a punch in anger in his entire life on this earth. And the one shot Jarvis did land caught Dion in the shoulder and made Jarvis's knuckles hurt more than it made Dion hurt anywhere. Dion was still laughing. Terry was yelling, "Oh my God. Oh my God. Y'all, stop," which was the worst thing a grown man could possibly say in a fight he was trying to break up. Finally, Terry got both arms under Jarvis's armpits and physically hauled him up off Dion like a man pulling a stuck toddler out of a ball pit. Jarvis stopped. He was breathing hard. Dion sat up on the floor. He put his hand on his shoulder where the punch had landed. He looked up at the two of them and said, with his whole ass chest, "Y'all need family therapy." Terry told him to get out of his house. Dion stood up slow and dusted off his pants and walked to the door. He looked back at Jarvis on the floor and Terry standing over him, and he said, "For the record, I was never going to actually tell nobody. I just wanted to see what you would do." And then Dion looked at Jarvis, really looked at him, and said, "Damn, y'all really do got something, huh? He actually likes your ass, and you like him back. I've been out here seducing the man, and y'all been out here playing house. That's crazy." He shook his head, half laughing, half disgusted, and walked out the door. Terry stood in the middle of the room with his hands at his sides. Jarvis got to his feet without looking at him. Jarvis said, "You the man I've been protecting this whole time?" "Nah, not no more. I'm done." He walked out through the open side door. Terry sat down on the leather couch and put his face in his hands. And somewhere in the main house, the baby started crying. Terry sat on that couch for a long time. He did not know how long. The jersey was still on the floor with its cracked glass catching a line of afternoon sun. The room smelled like ass and sweat. Terry had spent most of his adult life running from rooms exactly like this one, rooms he had made a mess and that he did not want to sit in afterward. And for the first time, he had nowhere to run. Upstairs, Claire had been laying in bed without moving. She was in there and had not said a word to Simone since she closed the kitchen door on her sucking her husband's dick. She did hear a car pull into the driveway earlier, and voices moving around the back of her house, but she had always been Claire. Claire had been shutting down since she was 9. Claire's daddy had walked out of their house when she was 12 with her brother in the passenger seat of a U-Haul and just left her and her mom. It taught Claire, in one afternoon, that love without a plan B was a thing fools built. Claire had never cared about what Terry did in secret. She knew he did dumb shit. She had known that since before they got married. But Terry had always known how to play the role of husband when she needed him to. He showed up at the school events. He signed the papers. He held her hand at the doctor when the baby wasn't breathing right. He was never the man she was in love with, but he was the man who made the life she was in love with possible. And right now, sitting in this bed with the ceiling fan turning above her, that was the only thing that mattered. Terry could fuck whoever he wanted. He always had. As long as he kept holding up his corner of the house, Claire could hold up hers. She sat up slowly, swinging her legs off the bed, and realized the house was too quiet. She hadn't heard the baby in a while. She hadn't heard Simone either. She walked down the hall to the nursery and stopped in the doorway. The diaper bag was gone from the hook by the door. The crib was empty. And on the changing table, folded once, was a note in Simone's handwriting. Claire picked it up. The note said, "I'm sorry. The baby deserves more than this. Not a house where everybody is lying to each other and calling it love. I have loved you for years, Claire. But I have to go. Please don't hate me. Signed, Simone." Claire's mouth opened, and the sound that came out of her was not a word and not a scream, but something in between. Raw, animal, coming from a place below her chest that she did not know she had. "That bitch!" It echoed down the hallway and into every room of the house. Terry had left the guest house and crossed the cul-de-sac to Jarvis's front door and knocked. He stood there in the sweats he had woken up in, the t-shirt he hadn't changed since yesterday, his whole life in pieces behind him. Jarvis opened the door and looked at him and said, "What do you want, Terry?" Terry said, "Just, please, listen to me for a second." Jarvis leaned against the doorframe with his arms crossed, not inviting him in. Terry took a breath and said, "First of all, you know your friend was a whore, right?" Jarvis's mouth twitched. He was trying not to smirk, but the smirk was already there. "Terry, stop with the jokes. What do you want?" Terry said, "Look, I know. I shouldn't have fucked him without telling you. That was wrong. I know that. But I didn't know the dick was going to have that man going crazy. I didn't know he was going to show up at my house on a Saturday morning trying to blackmail me into busting a nut." Terry was half laughing while he said it. Not because it was funny, because it was the only way he knew how to talk about the worst day of his life without falling apart. Jarvis looked him up and down and said, "You know what? I'm not even that pissed. I knew he wasn't a real friend anyway. He was begging me for your number the night of the gender reveal. He always did thirst over my leftovers." Terry's head pulled back. "Oh, I'm leftovers now?" Jarvis said, "Yeah, I'm leaving your ass right over there with your wife where you belong." He was smiling now. Terry rolled his eyes. The air between them was lighter than it had been an hour ago, and both of them could feel it. And both of them were grateful for it, even if neither of them was going to say so. Jarvis tilted his head. "So, was the ass at least good?" Terry said, "Not as good as yours." They both chuckled. And that was when Claire burst out of the front door across the cul-de-sac, still in her house clothes, barefoot, and she was screaming Terry's name 3 times in a row like the house was on fire. "Terry! Terry! Terry! That crazy bitch took our baby!" Terry was off Jarvis's porch in 2 seconds. Claire was running across the street toward them, and by the time she got to the bottom of Jarvis's steps, she was shaking, holding up her phone. Terry was trying to understand what she was saying, trying to calm her down, asking her, "What do you mean? She took the baby? Where? When?" Claire said, "I put a tracker in the baby bag a long time ago." She turned the phone around so Terry could see the screen. It was a map. A blue dot was moving north on the highway. Past the exits they both knew. "Terry, she took the baby. What are we going to do?" Terry looked at the map. He looked at Claire. He said, "Hop in the truck. Let's go get our daughter." Jarvis was already stepping off the porch, sliding his feet into his shoes. He said, "I'm coming with y'all. I'm going to call her and see if she answers." He pulled out his phone and dialed Simone's number. The line rang once, twice, 3 times. The 3 of them were already walking toward Terry's truck in the driveway when Jarvis's call went to voicemail. The sun was lower now, orange bleeding into purple at the edges. Simone was still driving. The baby was still quiet in the car seat behind her. A green highway sign appeared in the windshield, the name of the next town. She passed it without slowing down. Behind her, somewhere on the same highway, a truck was pulling onto the on-ramp with 3 people inside it and a blue dot on a phone screen getting closer by the minute. Simone did not know they were coming. She did not know about the tracker in the baby bag. She just drove. The baby made a small sound until she settled again. The road kept going. The married man next door had secrets. His wife had secrets. And now, those secrets have led to them racing down the highway to get their baby back. This was the final chapter of The Married Man Next Door has a secret DL Life Chronicles Volume 1. Thank you for listening to Stories Between Us Anthology. You can find every episode on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Rate the show and leave a comment. It helps more people find us.